This lesson is on long division of polynomials, and the first thing I want you to remember is how you did long division back in elementary school when you first remembered or learned how to do it. So we want to remember how to divide something like 2 into a really large number. Because the steps that we're going to use with polynomials are basically the same steps that you used here, you just need to see that relationship. And so the first thing you did was you divided 2 into the first number. And dividing is really asking what you multiply by that 2 to get 4. And so since 2 times 2 is 4, when you divide 2 into 4 you get 2. You put that above the 4. And then you multiplied the 2 times the 2, and you put that answer under the 4. Then you drew a little line and you changed the sign to subtract. Those went away, and most of the time we didn't put a 0, but you can put a 0. And then you brought down the 5. And you said, how many times is 2 going to go into 5? Or 2 divided into 5. And the most that you can get out of that is 2. And so 2 times 2 is 4. You write that down, you draw your line, and then you change the sign, you subtract. And you say 5 minus 4 is 1. Well, 2 obviously is not going to go into 1, so you bring down the next number, and you have 12. How many times does 2 go into 12? 6. 6 times 2 is 12. You write it down, you change the sign, it goes away. You bring down the 7. 2 doesn't go into 7 evenly, but the most it will go is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. You change the sign, you add down, you get a 1, you bring down the 0, realize that 5 times 2 is 10, you change the sign, and it goes away. So that was long division. This is your answer, okay? And so that's your quotient. And then your remainder would be 0 in this case. Sometimes you get something other than 0. But that's just a refresher of how long division worked in elementary school, and we're going to use the same steps. So for our first example, we have this polynomial x cubed minus 2x squared minus 9 divided by x minus 3. The first thing I want you to notice is that it goes x cubed, x squared, and then it doesn't have a plain x. If it doesn't have a plain x, you're going to have to put in a 0x. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You're going to get stuck. Whatever you're dividing by, this nice x minus 3, is what goes in front. So x minus 3, then you do your division symbol and you put in the x cubed minus 2x squared plus 0x minus 9. And again, if you're doing these on your homework and you get stuck, it's probably because it jumped a power of x and you forgot to fill that in with 0. And you'll see why we need that 0 as we get into the problem. Now, what I want you to look at is just the first thing that you're dividing by and the first thing that you're dividing into, just the x and the x cubed. And ask yourself, what do you multiply by x to get x cubed? And hopefully you realize that's x squared. Now, once you've decided that, you multiply that with both things in front and put your answers under the first two things. So x squared times x is x cubed, and x squared times negative 3x is, negative 3 is negative 3x squared. Now, just like when we're doing regular numbers from elementary school, we change the signs. So I come in, I make this a minus and this a plus. And then you add down. The first should go away just because you planned it that way. So I'm not going to write a 0 there. I'm just going to leave it. Negative 2x squared plus 3x squared is a 1x squared. So I do have that. Before you figure out the next thing, you want to bring down the 0x so that you have two pieces, because you're going to have two pieces from multiplying here. And then you ask yourself, what do you multiply by x to get x squared? And hopefully you realize that is x. So you put plus x at the top. And then you take your x and multiply it by both pieces. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. You draw your line. and then you change your signs. So negative, positive. The first two should cancel as you planned. Then you have 0x and 3x. That makes 3x when I add them. And I bring down that negative 9 so that I have two pieces for my last one. So I asked myself the question, what do I multiply by x to get 3x? And that would just be a 3. So I put plus 3, and I'll multiply it by both pieces. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. I draw my line. I change my signs. This goes away and this goes away. That means I have a remainder 0. What's left is my answer. You don't always get a remainder 0. And the other thing is, if you got stuck or couldn't figure out what to do, or you feel like you made a mistake, it might be because you forgot to change the signs. You change both signs from whatever they were when you write this line down. That's why I did it in red, because that's something that has to be done, but people forget to do it. Okay, example 2, I'm looking at 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. And I notice nothing has been skipped. I go from cubed to squared to first power and then none. And I'm dividing by x minus 2. So I'm going to stick the x minus 2 in front. And then I'm just going to write it all out. 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. Now if you feel like you know what you're doing, you can pause and try this on your own, or you can just keep listening. So I'm going to ask myself, what do I multiply by x to get 6x cubed? In this case, I get 6x squared. So I multiply, I get 6x cubed minus 12x squared. I draw my line, I change my signs. So the first part goes away, and then I have negative 19x squared and positive 12x squared, so that'll be a negative 7x squared. And then I bring down the plus 16x. In this case, what do I multiply by x to get negative 7x squared? It will be a negative 7x. Multiply by both things. So get negative 7x squared plus 14x. Change my signs. When I add down, the first part goes away, and then 16x minus 14x would just be 2x. I bring down the negative 4. And then I ask, what do I multiply by x to get 2x? And that would just be a 2. So I put a plus 2 on top. I multiply, get 2x minus 4. And then change my signs. And I add down, and they both go away, so I have a remainder of 0. My answer is the 6x squared minus 7x plus 2 found at the top. Okay, for our next one, I have 8x cubed minus 1 divided by 2x minus 1. And notice we skip a lot of powers here. So we're going to have a 0x squared and a 0x. So I need to put my 2x minus 1 in front. Then I have 8x cubed plus 0x squared plus 0x minus 1. I ask myself the question, what do I multiply by 2x to get 8x cubed? That would be 4x squared. I multiply, get 8x cubed. Multiply, get negative 4x squared. Change my signs, I get a negative and a positive. The first ones go away, and the second ones give me a 4x squared. Bring down the 0x so that I have two pieces. 2x times 2x would be 4x squared, so I need to put a 2x on top, and then multiply both pieces. So 2x times 2x would be 4x squared. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. I'm going to change my signs and add down. The first ones go away, the second ones give me a 2x, and I bring down that minus 1. Now, when you say, what do you multiply by 2x to get 2x, that's just 1. It is just 1, not 0. So multiply by 1, I should get 2x minus 1. Change my signs. When I add down, I get a remainder of 0, and what's left on top is my answer. Okay, and for our last example, we're going to divide by, instead of a binomial, we're going to be dividing by a trinomial. And with this as well, you want to make sure that you're not skipping any powers. So we don't want to skip any powers over here, and we don't want to skip any powers here. If we do, put zeros in for any of those cases. So I'm going to have the x squared plus x minus 1, and divide that into the 6x to the 4th minus x cubed minus x squared plus 9x minus 3. This time, since this has 3 pieces, I will have 3 things underneath, and so I'll need to make sure that once I subtract, I will have 3 things to work with. So again, I just still focus on that first piece though when I'm asking the question. So what do I multiply by x squared to get 6x to the 4th? That would be 6x squared. Multiply by 6x squared with all 3 pieces. So that would give me 6x to the 4th plus 6x cubed minus 6x squared. When I change my signs, I have a negative, and then a positive. The first part goes away, and then I have a negative 1x cubed and a negative 6x cubed, so that's negative 7x cubed. A negative x squared and a positive 6x squared will be a positive 5x squared. At this point, I only have 2 pieces and I need 3, so I bring down my plus 9x. Again, when you ask the question, you only focus on the first part. So x squared times what is negative 7x cubed? That would be a negative 7x. Multiply by that, I get negative 7x cubed minus 7x squared plus 7x. Then I change my signs to positive, positive, negative. The first part goes away. The 7 and the 5 I have to add and get 12x squared. And then 9 minus 7 would be 2x. And I still need to bring down the negative 3 so that I have 3 pieces. And this will be the last time I can answer this question. So what do I multiply by x squared to get 12x squared? And that would just be a 12. So 12 times x squared would be 12x squared. 12 times x would be 12x. And 12 times negative 1 is negative 12. Again, you want to make sure that you change your signs. Negative, negative, positive. The first part goes away. 2 minus 12 is a negative 10x. And negative 3 plus 12 would be a positive 9. Okay, so this is finally an example that had a remainder. And again, this was my answer, but I do have a remainder. And so there's actually 2 different ways that they could write that. They might write that as answer of 6x squared minus 7x plus 12, and then just say an R for remainder, negative 10x plus 9. Or you could write it as 6x squared minus 7x plus 12 plus whatever your remainder is over what you were dividing by. So the answer can be written either way. Whatever is more comfortable for you is fine, unless they tell you to specifically write it a certain way. So that concludes this lesson.